Hello, welcome to Chapter 1. We'll go through leadership theories here. And this chapter here kind of lays the foundation of what we'll be covering throughout not just the semester, but certainly in the first couple of weeks specifically here. Theories are really something that I know a lot of students tend to get bogged down with. And why do we have to be concerned with theory? Well, they help kind of provide a foundation and reference point as well. And so that's kind of the goal here, not just with this lecture and this slide deck, but with the first couple of them here in week 1. So we'll kind of dive in here. Just a quick overview. The theories in this slide deck are foundational in nature. They're ones that have spanned decades and in some cases even upwards of now almost 100 years since leadership was really coined a research area for academia as well as a practice. And we can think historically in the United States, at least for society, leadership really began to become prominent, especially after the Industrial Revolution, when we really first started to see some of the typical manufacturing and labor institutions that we still see nowadays, but back in their first iterations as well. Certainly, it's been around longer. If we think about historical wars or even George Washington as the first president of the United States, things like that. But these foundational theories have helped us and refine things in research and practice. And while we continue to use some of them, we've traditionally, at least on the research side, we've also evolved and we've used these as a foundation to build upon. So as we move forward, we may not hear as many of these terms come up again, whereas in the next couple of chapters, you might hear some of those theories come up again and again, especially in the readings that I've got for you all. Just think of these as kind of the foundation. Think of this as the building blocks that we've used. So they're still important. We still need to know them and be aware of the journey that we've been on for leadership and its evolution, and that's why we're covering them here. Theories in general, and this is not just for leadership, but any area of study that we're using in academia or anywhere that we might have in our career, a theory is basically, I like to call it a different lens, or a lens that we put on to look through and observe some kind of phenomenon or some kind of event. And depending on the theory that we're using, just like sunglasses or glasses that we're putting on, if we have different shades of sunglasses, we're going to see things a little bit differently. If we've got blue ones, that might help block out some of the sun. If we got yellow ones, that might help dim some of the lights, especially driving at night, for example. Things are going to look a little different here. We're still observing the same things. We're still observing that same event, that same phenomenon, but if we're using a different theory, i.e., if we're using different sunglasses, we're going to see some things that stand out a certain way, or we're going to be looking for some certain specific things. And that's really what theories are. They're just tools, they're lenses that we use to look at some kind of event or phenomenon. And if we use different theories, or sometimes we get, some folks will debate things. Well, are you even watching the same thing? Did you even read the same thing? Well, yeah, they're just coming at it from a different theoretical standpoint, perhaps, or a different perspective. That's all. Leadership in general, I like to boil it down, and this is a process, and that's something in the readings that I have you do for this first week. That should be a key takeaway. It's a process. It's an area that continues to grow. We have a lot of theories that are involved in the process of studying it and trying to refine it. It's not just a role, it's not just a position, but it's a behavior or group of behaviors that one exhibits within a role. And that could be formal leadership positions or informal. That could be a leader or a follower, and especially as we get into, and we'll talk a little bit more throughout the semester about socially constructed leadership. In a small group or a group where there's no formal leadership structure or positions, who emerges as somebody who leads a group? It could be a lot of different people, and some of it depends on the eye of somebody else in the group. I might follow one of you all in a group, but you may not follow the same person. And it just kind of depends on a lot of different factors. So overall, leadership is a journey, and it's a process. We don't just achieve a leadership position and then stop. We have to keep going, keep developing, keep improving. Now, leadership goes hand in hand with power, and this is some kind of condition that exists so that we can influence, or a leader influences a group or individual, and they can potentially change or at least enhance or influence that person's behavior, their action, attitudes, all kinds of things. We can think of this in the work setting. It might be one of the easier ones, or even on a sport team. Usually we could dub a coach, head coach, as a leader, and then the players as the followers there, people that are being influenced. It's that power, though, that allows a leader to try to get a group or an individual motivated to achieve the desired goals. Without that power, without that credibility, that's part of it as well, nobody's going to do anything. The group's not going to be motivated, and it's going to fail. We're not going to achieve anything. Here there are different types of power. So we have reward power, coercive, and legitimate. I've provided the definitions here. I won't go into too many details. Won't go into too many further details here. I think and my style tends to be, if there's a definition we can talk about a little bit more, or points of clarification if need be, just let me know. But otherwise, I try to be pretty thorough with this so that the definition and the term can kind of stand on its own, really. So just make sure we're aware of these. Then we get the last few here: referent power, expert power, and informational power as well. Dynamics of leadership styles. There's an argument made, and we found a lot of times that leadership styles need to change to fit the situation. And there's a lot of elements to it. It could be the leader, the subordinate, or the follower, then the situation and environment. And we see time and time again, not every leadership style fits every situation. One of the common ones that we can think of in sport, and you all, if you've played a sport growing up or currently or have in college perhaps, we can think of it as head coaching styles. We've got a very, very boiled down version here would be what we tend to dub a player's coach. Somebody who's not really an enforcer, somebody who will defend the players in the media, will let them have a little bit more rope as far as practice and habits and things go, versus somebody who's a little bit more of a hardline type of coach. It's my way or the highway. If a player underperforms, I'm going to be sure to call them out or acknowledge it in the media or in the locker room. I might yell and scream a little bit. We could think of, probably on both examples here, we're probably thinking of a couple examples that we've run into potentially, or just famous coaches that we know of. So again, that leadership style, sometimes one works over the other, and we tend to see some teams kind of swing in one direction or the other. If a team has just been with a little bit of a dictator type or hardline type of coach, then they might realize that, hey, we need a break. We've got the talent and everything. We might just need a coach who's a little less intense, a little bit more relaxed, and a little bit more of a player's coach. The organization might try to find that type of coach to fit that situation and environment. Next, we have got some different paths to leadership here. That can be appointment or election. We also tend to see now something that's emerging is kind of the development aspect. And so, as we climb the ranks in a sport organization, we continue to develop, then we're going to make a jump. And that's a little bit more of a follower-based type of approach here. But again, appointment and election, some of the more common ones. Then we tend to see emergence. And that gets into a little bit more of the development type aspect I just mentioned. Charisma, although this is a slippery slope, charisma can be good to an extent, but it can also be potentially tricky because somebody who's very charismatic can sometimes be over the top to hide some other flaws or some unethical behaviors, and that to throw people off the trail. Some of the basic theories that we've seen and foundational aspects here going back quite a while. One is a great man theory, and this is an argument that leaders are born, they're not made. And then we also see trait theory, and that's a systematic approach, and that leadership abilities emerge over time. We're put in certain situations, and we either see these leadership traits come out of us or not. So these are basically, this boils down to the argument of, are leaders born or are leaders made? What we found over time is that it's a combination of both. There's support for both arguments, and it also kind of depends. We'll see that a lot of times leadership is an area where there's some gray areas as far as some of these arguments go. Certainly there's ethical or unethical, and that's pretty black and white. But as far as theoretical arguments and support goes, a lot of it kind of depends. Depends on the situation, depends on the leader, depends on organizational goals, all sorts of things there. We do see, to address that, and as a good segue here, is that situational theory. And this leadership theory basically argues that different leadership styles emerge from the different situation or environment that we're put in. What we can boil this down to is kind of a sliding scale, that a good leader who approaches leadership through a situational theoretical perspective and practice is going to take a look at the situation. This could be the followers, the group, maybe the organizational goals, whatever is around them, and determine the best approach rather than only defaulting to some kind of basic trait theory or some kind of dictatorship or democratic. They're going to say, okay, I might need to be democratic in this situation and garner support and feedback from a group, but maybe there's another time where, hey, we're up against a deadline, we haven't gotten the work done, we need things to move along and hit that deadline, so I need to be a little bit more authoritarian in this situation. And then other times, we can think of it as maybe a head coach example here for laissez-faire. Somebody who's coaching a veteran team or an all-star team probably doesn't have to motivate them too much. They don't have to be in their face all the time. They can set a play, they can go through things in practice, certain plays and everything, and they know it's going to be taken care of. Everybody else around them is a veteran, so we don't need to necessarily be as hands-on. We definitely don't need to be authoritarian. So again, a situational leadership theory here, that type of leader is going to say, okay, what situation am I facing, and what's the best approach to leadership that is going to help us in this specific situation. And we've got path goal, and this is just boils down as the name suggests here, so we're really not pulling any punches with this one. Leaders affect and impact attaining goals through motivation. So, and that could be these different types here. Directive, so you're given directive, you're given orders, you're given pretty much development plan, something that's outlined and is pretty substantial. You're given clear directions, you're given clear metrics to hit. Or we could say supportive leadership, and this is a little different. This is trying to support others. This one, hey, you're still working towards a goal, but I'm not going to necessarily tell you how to achieve it, but I'll support how you try to achieve it. Then we've got participative leadership, and this is a little bit more kind of down in the trenches, working alongside folks. Leaders who abide by this, you tend to hear them kind of speak of the nature of calling somebody coworkers rather than subordinates or followers. But then we've got achievement-oriented leadership, and that's just attaining goals, attaining certain metrics, titles, things like that. So very achievement-based and motivated here. So, and that just kind of helps wrap that up here. So set high expectations and goals, so we can kind of get in these ones. So pretty quick and straightforward. I'm trying to keep the video lectures here short, so they're digestible, so it's not hours or tens and tens of minutes on top of each other, so we can work through them. The purpose here is to supplement you reading the PowerPoints on your own and the slides. So make sure I would read the class materials, go through the PowerPoints, have the PowerPoints either printed out or on your computer as you're watching this, and then making additional notes as I kind of guide through it a little bit and hit the high points. So that's it for Chapter 1.